is Zuccotti Park in New York City, not far from Wall Street. In the background, a few protesters. It's a far cry from the hundreds who occupied this park for 60 days in a demonstration which came to be known as Occupy Wall Street. Mark Bray was one of those demonstrators. He's a PhD student who joined the movement when it started on the 17th of September.
What it's like today.
Yeah, I mean, this had become the focal point of a global movement. It had generated a conversation about inequality and class differences and economic justice in this country, which we haven't had for decades. And then we were just swept away like a bunch of garbage, pushed aside. But I think it really shows that we've become a threat to the upper class, that we've become so significant that we can't be ignored.
A movement that can't be ignored, one which was inspired by the Arab Spring and European protests of demonstrating against injustice. In America, Wall Street became the symbol of that injustice, an unfair system where the so-called 1%, the corporate banks, got bailed out, and the 99%, the rest, were sold out. In other words, left in debt, unemployed, and especially frustrated. By mid-October, Occupy Wall Street had spread not only to other U.S. cities, but also overseas. Demonstrators equated Wall Street with financial markets which had speculated and gambled away taxpayers' money only to be saved by the government. But Occupy Wall Street was also criticized for being leaderless, with no real demands, no real debate, and too many issues. They were blamed for public disruption and anarchy and were evicted by the police on the 15th of November. Today, some claim Occupy Wall Street is finished, that Wall Street has won. But Mark Bray doesn't agree.
People are frustrated for a wide variety of reasons, which is why we have so many different issues that we focus on. And so that's why I think it's gotten so popular, is because the power was there, it just needed a direction to be channeled. And now Occupy Wall Street's given that to people, and people are taking it up themselves wherever they live and making it into their own project.
This is what Steph Gray has done with Occupy student debt. She said she was inspired by Occupy Wall Street to start a website where people posted horror stories about being in debt. She's angry with a system that allowed a Fortune 500 company, a private lender, to charge interest rates to students that have little chance of paying those loans back. She herself took out $80,000 to pay for university. Today she owes $135,000. She's 23 years old and unemployed.
That's the thing. Yes, I signed for the loans. Yes, I knew that I was taking out debt. I knew that I was buying into this game, but I didn't know that the game was rigged.
Student loan debt in the U.S. is now greater than credit card debt. Soon it's expected to surpass $1 trillion.
College is expensive. Tuition costs have risen 600% between 1980 and 2010, which is why I believe that the baby boomer generation doesn't understand why exactly all this student debt was taken out in the first place. And what about the fact that 10 years ago, the message that my generation was raised on was, go to college, go to college. If you don't go to college, you're a bad person. You need to follow your dreams, study what you love. And my major, geographic information systems, that's a sturdy science. That's not underwater basket weaving, and yet there's no jobs. 2 years ago, I would have been fine, but entry-level jobs have simply disappeared. They've been replaced with the idea of unpaid internships to build your resume. And I've worked internships. They're already on my resume. I worked as a research assistant at my college. I don't need to build my resume. I need to pay my rent.
Come to the rescue.
In his home not far from New York City, Peter Schiff calls himself part of the 1%. But he's not ashamed. Half of his earnings goes to taxes, and his company has created some 150 jobs. This investment guru, writer, and radio show host is also one of the few 1%ers who went to Occupy Wall Street to talk to the 99%.
Maybe it's not capitalism that has failed them. It's socialism. It's corporatism. It's crony capitalism.
I know that they have a right to be frustrated based on what's happening in the U.S. economy, but unfortunately, they're blaming the wrong people. Trying to blame Wall Street or just successful, wealthy people in general is wrong. The problem is government. The problem is there's too much government. There's too much government involvement in the economy. There's too much government involvement in the banking sector in Wall Street. The reason that so many people speculated in the housing market was because of the government. The government made it so enticing with guaranteed mortgages. The government made it so enticing with artificially low interest rates. I'm not blaming Americans for gambling with somebody else's money when they were given the opportunity. The problem is they should have never had that opportunity. And that opportunity was only there because of the Fed and all the things that the government was doing.
Blaming too much government for the financial crisis. It's a popular message among American conservatives like Schiff. But Mike Mayo says you can't just blame Washington. He worked for the Federal Reserve. He also worked on Wall Street. He's written a book in which he warned that nothing has changed since 2008. For him, capitalism has been given a bad name with the financial crisis.
Frustration on Wall Street is that government has not facilitated free markets. There's been too much meddling. And people on Wall Street are upset, too, that some of the worst players have been bailed out. I mean, if you allow the bad actors to continue, it taints the entire banking industry, it taints the financial industry, it taints corporate America, and it sends a bad signal out. The issue is, so what if a CEO gets paid an extra $10 million or $20 million when he doesn't deserve it? In the scope of the size of these companies, it's not even a rounding error. But the issue is it sends a signal to all the other bank employees that the system is rigged. It sends a signal to all the other banks. It sends a signal to the other corporations, and that in turn simply sends a signal that our system is not fair.
This is one of the new faces of Occupy Wall Street. Today in the New York borough of Brooklyn, it's Occupy Our Homes. It's estimated that some 2 million homes in the U.S. have already been foreclosed by banks because of the subprime crisis. Next year, that number is expected to double. Senya Barragan is a student. She's $25,000 in debt. Her parents' home is threatened with foreclosure.
If we want real change to happen in our lives for everyday working Americans, we need to take action and we need to say, no, Obama, this is wrong. We need people that, there are millions of homes that are unoccupied. There are millions of families. We need to get them back in there.
We got sold out. We got sold out. We got sold out.
Occupy Wall Street, occupy student debt, occupy homes, occupy banks, occupy unemployment, just occupy. This is the message of the 99%, but some wonder if the percentage of these occupies is just too high.
Do you think the 99% that this can really get somewhere? I mean, the whole
Absolutely.
idea. Why?
Absolutely. Because 99% of people should have a much larger voice than 1% of people. Just because the 1% have more money than the 99% isn't a reason for us not to have any kind of say in what happens in our lives.
The problem with the government in the city is that when they make a mistake, they can't fix it because that means there's other people they have to fix. So they keep trying to just go away. The Occupy movement is not going away. I'm not going away. So, it's going to happen. Listen.
Children, you don't care. But we care.
But with the global financial crisis far from over, the concern is who will really be listening to the occupiers.